Ask parents of kids with learning and behavioral disorders if their children experience problems with sensory processing, and many of them will answer with a resounding yes. However, your kids' sensory issues can be prevented from inhibiting their daily functioning, and Dr. Rebecca Jackson from Brain Balance Center in Cary is here to explain to us how. Dr. Jackson, welcome back on the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
So you told me off the air 13% of kids?
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting where it's kind of always been thought of as a subset of other conditions, and so a symptom that may go along with ADHD, autism, but what research is really starting to show us is there's a difference in brain patterns with children with sensory processing issues, and so it's actually, we're starting to look at it as a separate standalone issue. So just because a child is struggling with sensory processing doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have ADHD, autism, or other complications.
It's a completely different issue.
Completely different issue that's often seen together, but it can also be separate.
And so it's important to isolate it to figure out exactly what it is. What are some of the signs that we need to be looking for in our children?
Yeah, you know, we'll kind of paint a picture and then we'll talk about the specifics. But again, what you and I were talking about off the air is we all assume that we see things and experience things the same as other people. So a child learning to ride a bike, that little bit of a wobble that you may feel with training wheels for you and I, for a child that processes sensory information differently, that little bit of a wobble may feel like a massive swing. And so their body is perceiving information and, like you said, integrating it into the brain in a different way.
And so let's talk about hypersensitivity. There's what is hypersensitivity?
So hypersensitivity is going to be when the brain is actually over-amplifying information. And so symptoms that you can see going along with hypersensitivity are going to be an extreme response to noises. The child might avoid hugs and touch. The child may be fearful of crowds and doesn't like to be high off of the ground. It can often struggle with balance because, again, their brain is misinterpreting this information.
And the opposite of that is hyposensitivity? Correct. All right, what are some of those symptoms?
So symptoms that can go along with hyposensitivity might be a constant need to touch people, so that compulsive touching with the child. The child may struggle to understand personal space and boundaries. The child may present a little more clumsy and uncoordinated. They can have a higher pain tolerance because, again, they're not feeling things as much as they should. And we can see that child actually accidentally harming children or pets because, again, they're misinterpreting how that touch is going to feel to somebody else.
And if undiagnosed, what are some of the long-term effects that can happen to children if they suffer from sensory processing disorder? You
know, it's huge in terms of things like anxiety, stress. You can imagine sitting in a classroom scenario can be challenging for any child. And then you add over-amplified noise, and it's going to take a stressful situation and make it even more stressful for a child. So we can see a huge impact on confidence for a child, on willingness to try and experience new things. The child just might be a little more fearful. And again, we can just really see those confidence pieces impacted with a child.
So if you're a parent, bring them to Brain Balance. How can Brain Balance help?
So Brain Balance is all about impacting the areas of the brain that aren't processing information correct. What we say at Brain Balance all the time is what fires together, wires together. So we're targeting the regions of the brain that aren't properly integrating information, and we're lighting them up over and over and over again so that we actually change that sensory integration, to change the processing so that what you experience as a little bit of wobble really is a little bit of wobble, or light touch, or whatever the example may be. We want you to experience that information more accurately to help bring down stress levels for the child and for the family.
And it's working. It's changing lives without medication.
Without medication.
Honestly, thank you so much for coming on with me.
Absolutely, thank you.
To find out more about how the Brain Balance program can benefit your child, or to schedule an appointment at either the Cary or Wake Forest locations, go to brainbalancecenters.com.